Wilsy ma'am,
Yes, ma'am. Can
can
I
we begin?
start? Sure.
Yes, yes. One second, ma'am. Good evening, participants. Today we have Dr. Wilsy Francis, who will be addressing us on management of adolescence issues. So she'll be addressing today on counseling skills. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rosa, ma'am. Good evening to all.
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening,
Good
ma'am.
evening, ma'am.
Nice to see all. I've been there for the last two sessions also, last three sessions also with you all, but I didn't open my video. I kept my video off, so most of you might not have seen me. But, I'm assistant professor in the counseling department, PG counseling department in Roshni, Nilaya. So the topic which is given
One
to
second,
me
Wilsy ma'am.
is,
Ma'am, can you increase your volume? It's not very audible, ma'am.
yeah,
Yeah. A little louder.
okay, ma'am. Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So, good evening to all. Today, this evening session, we would be dealing with, or we would be looking into the counseling skills, the skills that we have to employ in our counseling sessions with the adolescents. And as we all know, that adolescents are not children, they are not adults, but they are in transition. Therefore, we need to be skilled and equipped to address their needs in ways which are acceptable to them. Because sometimes, if you are not very skilled, they don't feel being heard, and as a result, they may not even uh, come back to our sessions again or have a follow-up sessions. Am I audible, or you still having difficulty to hear me?
Ma'am, you're audible.
Ma'am, this is Akila. Can you close the windows? I think there's a lot of traffic sound coming, so that is why we can't hear you. There's a lot of
Yeah,
background
wait,
noise.
wait. Click to everyone. Can you see the screen which I'm sharing?
No, ma'am.
No, it's gone blank.
Yeah.
Now it's come back.
Sharing has to be done. Now can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So what I have been saying is the counseling skills is very important for us to deal with our adolescents. And we know that our adolescents are not children, uh, neither they are adults, they are in transition. Therefore, we need to be skilled and equipped to deal with or to address their issues or to deal with their issues. Otherwise, it is difficult to engage them in counseling and to enable them to talk freely. We must have noticed that many counselors and teachers, even parents for that matter, finds very difficult to join with adolescents and engage them in talking. And this can be a serious problem when it comes to counseling because without gaining the trust of the clients, we won't be able to make the counseling effective and productive. So this challenge calls for a greater need for us to be skilled and equipped. Here I'm going to, before I proceed to the discussion part, sharing the content with you, I would like to, uh, I would want you to respond to this question. What do you as parents do when your adolescent child's behavior causing problems to the family or to others? Maybe you can put the answers can type your answers your responses in the chat box. I would love to see that. What do you as parents do when your adolescent child's behavior causing problems to the family or to others? Are you able to see my slides? Participants, am I audible?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Lecture. I would like to think what is the reason behind the behavior. Slides are not visible.
Slides are visible, but it is not in a slideshow.
Oh. How about now? Can you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Visible, ma'am.
Is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
All
yes.
right. All right.
Yes, visible.
Okay. Just a moment.
Now,
Yeah. But no, I cannot see that's why I'm saying I was asking now. I will see just a minute. 1 minute. What you know, we take this left side. Participants, just wait for a while. I am encountering some difficulties here to make the slide show. Now when we click this, that goes What is this? I reach what? Maybe maximize. The problem here is when I put it in slideshow, I'm not able to see your chat messages.
We'll see, ma'am.
Um,
Ma'am, it happens like that. You can see the slide and change through it, but we can see you. Only thing is, if the answers are coming in the chat box, I will notify you, ma'am.
yeah, all right, that's fine.
If you
Thank you,
don't
ma'am.
bother about it, I'll help you.
Yeah. So may I continue with the presentation?
Ma'am, there are disturbances. Either maybe because of the windows are open. Participants are hearing lots of noises. So if you can close the window, so there will be no distraction. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Otherwise, it is fine. You put it in the slideshow.
Ma'am, when I put it in the slideshow, I am not able to. Okay, I will do it. I'll put it in the slideshow. That's better. So is it visible to you now? I've put it in the slideshow.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
All right.
Not fully visible. Only a half the portion.
Now it's half visible.
Half visible, ma'am.
Yeah.
Half the slide.
You have to zoom out, ma'am. Zoom out.
Now
What
this
is
is
that?
okay, ma'am. This should
Or
be okay.
F5.
Is this okay?
Or you can press F.
Is this
You
okay?
can
Yes,
press function.
ma'am. This is fine.
This is okay, ma'am. We can read whatever
And
is
we
coming.
can read. We can
All
read.
right.
We'll
Yeah,
continue
thank
with
you.
this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I have, I've got some responses here. Talk to the child. Spend time to talk to the child. Then what else? Yeah. So some of the okay. So so most of you have said that we need to talk to the child, right? So that it's true to some extent. We need to talk to the child about what is it that is bothering him or her, and that comes you can mute your mic. Okay. All right. So I would also want you to see to this question. What do you think about adolescents' attitude towards counseling? Adolescents' attitude towards counseling. Even you can respond to it through the chat box. Adolescents' attitude. What do you think about adolescents' attitude towards counseling? Maybe some of you can put your responses in the chat box. In short, we all know that this adolescence, there is ample evidences in the literature that young people are generally reluctant to talk to adults about their sensitive issues, and And of course, they express their difficulty to confide adults and counselors, because that shows that adolescents are not very much interested in going for counseling. Their help-seeking behavior is very much minimum or limited. And a discussion paper presented by WHO on the helping behavior of adolescents in the year 2015 states that there are a few barriers for help-seeking behaviors among the adolescents. One is the prejudice and the bias of parents. Because sometimes we know that our child, our son or our daughter wants to be helped. Maybe wants to need to go for a professional help. Most of the time, the parents, when we realize that need, as parents, we need to think twice. We are a little bit hesitant to do that. Maybe, most probably it would be because the stigma associated to counseling. So that has come up here. The prejudices and bias of the parents, the stigma associated to counseling, and the perception of their needs. We need to know how our young people define their needs. Okay? Most of the time, it looks like our need. It's mama's need or dada's need that I have to see a counselor. So I have heard from young people when they come for counseling, I don't think I need counseling. When mama is forcing me, she brought it. She's standing outside there. So that is how they respond. She's standing outside there. She's the one who wants me to come for counseling. I don't know for what why she is pushing me to counseling. So this is, see how, that means that they are not very much aware of their needs, the way they define their needs, we should be aware of. We should know. Only then they would find counseling a need or they would find it as an appropriate thing for them. And also the last point, the fourth point that has been discussed in the research discussion by WHO is that the lack of counselors who understand adolescents, sensitive to their needs and realities, and know how to listen to and talk to them. See that this difficulty, even counselors and teachers and even parents experience that. Most of the time, we do not know how to talk to our adolescents. We don't know how to deal with their issues, how to journey with them when we find them in distress. So these challenges really shows that there is a greater need for us counselors, teachers, and parents to develop our counseling skills. So therefore, I have decided to, so that's one of the reasons we decided to discuss about the influencing skills. Okay, that even here also, as I already mentioned, many young people are generally reluctant. They don't want to talk about anything of their issues. They find difficult to express their real needs, the most intimate and sensitive needs to the adults, even to the parents. They don't want to disclose. So let's see how we can improve our skills, how we can polish our skills. So influencing skills actually is part of counseling. We know that every counseling begins with listening. We don't begin with influencing skills. Always counseling begins with influencing skill. It begins with listening skill. Once the rapport is developed, that is the rapport between the client and the counselor. When the relationship is built up, then we move on to the influencing skill. So why is it that why is it that influencing skills cannot be used in the initial stage? Because we need to influence the individual. Because being genuinely heard by another person can influence a person's behavior. That we all know. Sometimes, recently, a client was sent to me by a teacher. So he was under the influence of alcohol. And around 17 years old, he was 16 or 17 years old. He came to me. And so when he came to me, I just asked him, and he was quite aware that it was his teacher who referred him to me. So I just asked him, what made you to come for counseling? Then he said, my teacher, she told me to meet you. So I said, yeah. So, but you have a choice. You had a choice not to come or not to come. I said, he said, yes, because she's a very good teacher, ma'am, and she listens to me. See here, she listens to me. So when the client feels that he's being heard by another person, then it is easy for us to influence the person's behavior. Even for that sake, for a parent, for a mother, if the child finds the mother very understanding, very caring. Most of the time we are caring, but when it comes to understanding, we don't know how far the child perceives us as understanding mother or understanding father or an understanding counselor. Because the moment they say something, we try to analyze it, we try to judge, we try to give them advice, which they would feel which would immediately block them. So they don't want to talk anymore further. So it is very important that the person should feel that he or she is being heard. When you say that a person felt that she or he is being heard, that means there is an acceptance from the part of the other person. So once the individual feels that I'm accepted as I am, then he is open for a change. So that is how we can influence a person's behavior. And the influencing skill, as I said earlier, we always begin counseling with listening skills. By listening, okay, we use listening skills to build a rapport with the client. And later, once the rapport is built, we just move on to the influencing skills. So influencing skills we often use when we find the client exploring alternative ways of thinking or behaving. Just let us take the example which I said. The boy, I know that the teacher knew that the boy was under the influence of alcohol. And he himself knew that I am referred just for this. But there is willingness from his part to make a change or to explore an alternative. Okay? Because he felt that his teacher really listened to him, cared for him, has accepted him, in spite of knowing that he is under the influence of alcohol. So influencing skills can be used to directly deal with the client or to directly approach the client for a change. So it's very important. So now you know how important it is the influence to get to be influenced by the client. The client has to be. We need to have certain skills to influence our client. Only then we would be able to get them engaged in the counseling process and to get them talk freely. Now there are certain ways of employing the influencing skills. These are some of the influencing skills: interpretation and reframing, logical consequences, self-disclosure, feedback, advice, suggestions, informations, and directives. These are the 6 influencing skills. We will be looking into it one by one. So let's now first look into the interpretation and reframing. So, why do we need to interpret, or why do we need to reframe the client's story or the experience? Because we know that we have to, first we need, as counselors or as teachers or as parents, we need to understand that adolescents often have a very compartmentalized view of the world, and they are unable to see a broader picture. So this view, this compartmentalized view can lead them to unrealistically negative perceptions. So it is important that we need to help them to have a clear picture of what is it that what is the clear picture of their own, clear picture of the picture that which they have. Okay. In other words, we can say that in other words, the young people, they always have, or they always feel that the way they see, the way they perceive should be the way the others also perceive the things. But that's not actually not possible all the time. We need to make them understand that yes, they are seeing it. That is the way you see it. But there is a larger part to it. So how do we do that? We cannot just tell them that this is not the way you should be. Because most of the time, this is how we deal with them. No, this is not the way you should be doing. It has to be done this way. So here, what are we trying to say? We are trying to tell them that the way you see things is incorrect. You should look at it, you should try to perceive things the way we do, we elders do, or we adults do. So interpretation and reframing actually provide the client a new frame of reference from which to view life situations and generate new stories. In other words, you are actually helping the client to frame a different, to frame a story which can provide a better meaning. So that is how we are trying to do. It is not that we are negating or we are disapproving of his or her views. It is very essential that the reframes do not discount or deny the part of the picture which is initially focused by the adolescent. Rather, we need to incorporate their part also into the wider picture. Because if we fail to do that, it would be like we are invalidating their perception, and they would not be wanting to talk anymore about that issue. So what for example, many people who are harassed, think that the issues happen is because of their fault, and they blame themselves. Okay, so here the counselor's interpretation, or the counselor has to help the individual to reframe it so that he or she can come out of the self-blaming. Otherwise, all throughout their life, they would think that it happened, that abuse happened, or the harassment happened just because it was because of my fault. So if the person is going to ponder on this kind of belief or this kind of thinking, then all throughout her life she would be feeling miserable. So adolescents often experience some kind of abuse or harassment, but we need to make them realize that it is not their issue, but they themselves cannot make it. But this is where I said we need to help them to find a new meaning in their story without discounting their experiences, without discounting or deny the pain or the hurt involved in their experiences. We should acknowledge that pain. Okay, so reframing doesn't mean that we are denying or we are disapproval of the pain involved or the experience that they have. We should acknowledge that it is there. By acknowledging, with that acknowledgement, we should be able to interpret, or we should be able to help them to reframe or to find a new meaning in that old story. And this will really help the individual to integrate or to accept and integrate the painful experiences and come out of it gradually. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So this is where the interpretation and reframing perhaps can be called as most central influencing skills, because we are trying to help the individual to rewrite a story or to find different meaning, a new meaning in the old story, so that the person would be able to generate new emotions. Do you have any doubts or clarification? Am I clear to you, participants?
Ma'am, can you give an example of how can you reframe in a counseling session? Because
Yes, I'm giving you an example. So, for example, let's take this example. An adolescent girl who is complaining that she is frequently asked to look after the younger brother, whereas her twin sister never has to do this. Okay, very often children adolescents complain about this. Mama always assigned me to do this work. Okay, why can't she give this to her? Give this to my brother, or why can't she give this to my sister? Because most of the time they think that being the eldest, I am asked to take many responsibilities, which I really do not want. They don't appreciate it. They feel that it is something that we are doing to burden them. So here, this is the suitable reframe for this particular issue can be, we can reframe it this way. You may be more mature. Your mother must have found you more mature than your twin sister. So that is a kind of reframing. I feel that my impression is that you may be more mature than your twin sister, or maybe in the absence of your mother or in the absence of your father, you are looking after them, looking after your younger brother in a very responsible way, even though you feel you find it very tiresome or boring. So this is how, now when you reframe this particular example, this issue of the child, that is about the complaining. So she is her focus is only the task being assigned to her. That is a difficult task. I cannot manage. Why is it that only I have to do all the time? Why can't she ask my sister to do it? Here, when you reframe this issue of the child, or when you do the interpretation of this particular problem of the child, of the adolescent or the girl, what happens here? That she begins to realize that she is allowed more freedom than her twin sister, and also her parents have found her more trustworthy in carrying out the responsibilities. Now you see the difference. This interpretation or this reframing is really done with the help of a counselor. As a girl, as an adolescent girl, she will not be able to do it. That is why she was complaining about it. Now here, we are giving them an interpretation. But remember always, when you give an interpretation or when you help the client to reframe her story, check out with her whether it is applicable to her life, whether it is appropriate for her. And Always when the individual finds that what she said what she said as we have believed what she has said, then it would be easy for them to accept that reframe or the interpretation. If we give them the impression that, yeah, it's not, do you think that your mother really burdening you or really giving you this task just because she loves your twin sister more than you? So see, when you talk to the child, they may come up with many reasons to prove that they are really being burdened by their parents. But at the same time, when we reframe it or when we give a different interpretation to that story, the client is able to look at it in a different way, in a meaningful manner. So here, the girl, when the interpretation happened, when the reframe happened, the client is able to realize that, yeah, maybe, yeah, it's true. Maybe my mother is, then the client will be able to recall other incidents where the mother must have found her as a responsible child to entrust things with, or the way she is carrying out things. So this is one of the one example that I am giving you how to reframe or how to interpret a situation. Is that is this example clear to you? I think Akila asked, I believe. Oh,
N-
yeah.
yeah, it's clear, ma'am. Um, yeah, it's clear.
Anything more you want to ask? It sounds like you need to ask something more.
Yeah, no, because you said that when the client, supposing it's a child, in a way, what you're trying to say is you are trying to show the positive picture to the child and not
Yeah,
make the child's problem big, but help her to have a positive outlook towards her entire situation.
exactly.
Saying that maybe your mother finds you more responsible or more matured, but to be honest, ma'am, we really do not know the mother, or we do not know whether it's because she feels her responsible or for whatever reason. So is it okay to reframe it without knowing the
No, no, no.
factors at home?
Yes, it's good that you bring out that question. See, when I say we are only dealing with the skills, right? I'm just
Okay.
explaining to you. See, when it is in the counseling session, we are not going to just take that particular issue of the client. The client,
Okay.
we would be dealing with them. We would be just talking to them and exploring more of the situations at home, the background at home. Okay, it's not that just I'm just giving you an example because we are learning the skill of reframing your interpretation.
Okay,
But
ma'am.
definitely, we would be knowing what is we would be exploring the background of the child. In what situation she is feeling it. If this is not the situation, there will be some situation which we could relate with her real life situation. It
Okay.
is not that something we are doing it, which is not any. That's why I told you very in the beginning, when you reframe or when you interpret a situation, see that you are you are not disapproving or you are not ignoring the pain that is involved in the experience of the child or in the experience of the individual. We need to consider it. We need to acknowledge that pain. Okay, for that we need to explore the background of the situation and background of the uh, problem. In what situation the child experienced that. Okay. Otherwise, reframing or interpretation would not be effective. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So here, as I already explained it, it provides a new way of understanding the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, which often result in a perspective of making meaning. They already explained to you that it really helps the client to, when the client finds meaning in that particular problem, then definitely her feelings would change, and her behavior would change. Otherwise, it is not going to happen.
Excuse me. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, yes, dear. Yes, please.
Ma'am, you said, for example, another example you gave us it was with a person with child abuse. You said you would have to help them to reframe the case or the story so the child does not end up blaming themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how would you go about doing it? What would you tell the child?
You mean to in that abuse case?
So that yes, yes. So
See,
that the child, does not end up, like you said, without discounting the pain and
yeah,
helping them trying to find a new meaning to the story.
yeah. See,
So
most
how
of
would
the time, yeah, yes. Most of the time, such clients would take up that issue as their fault and they would blame themselves. That's what the example that I gave you.
yes, yes,
So,
and
what would happen? Yeah, tell
how will
me.
you redeem them of their guilt? Because they will always have that guilt that they were responsible for the incident. So
Yeah.
how do you help them get rid of that guilt? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it is not just going to happen all of a sudden. We need to help the client step by step that how that situation happened. Was you really went there to deliberately went there so that it happened? See, for example, a girl who has gone to a relative's place, okay, and her uncles or somebody abused her or something she did, okay. So it is not that. So when she comes back, the child as she is, she's helpless to react to resist to that situation.
Mm,
But it doesn't mean that she willingly yield to that.
mm,
Okay, but at that point of time, in that pain, the child would never think that it is not my fault. He or she always would think that
Voice is
I.
not audible.
Okay, can you hear me? Am I audible now?
We can't listen to you, madam.
It's clear
Ma'am,
to me. It's for me,
Clear
it
to
is
me.
audible. Yeah, yeah.
it's audible. The voice
Yeah.
is audible. Please
Audible,
continue.
ma'am.
Ma'am.
Please continue.
Hello, no volume.
Audible? Yeah,
Continue, ma'am.
Audible, audible, ma'am.
yeah.
It's audible.
Maybe
It's audible,
Mustafa,
ma'am. Please continue.
Mustafa, you just see whether you're. I think most of them are saying that it is audible.
It's audible.
Hello.
Yes, Mustafa. Am I not audible for you?
Mustafa, you can check your network and
Yeah.
Wilsy, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay, okay, thank you. So, see, just now I'm answering to your question. So it's not something that can be done within a session or two to make the child convinced of that she is it is not her fault. Okay, so you need to analyze. Even you need to sit and analyze this child, the situation, how it happened. And most of the time they think that I went there and I couldn't resist, because it doesn't mean that I couldn't resist, doesn't mean that I deliberately give into it. Okay, so gradually you have to lead the client to the process that when you deal with the situation, when you try to analyze the situation with the child, he or she will be able to reframe it. Okay, they would find a meaning to that story. They would be able to reframe the story, the old story, into something new. Because what is important here is make them realize that it is not that issue that they have to take it for themselves. It is something that happened externally without their intention. Because to go into an uncle's place, it's not something we are not. The child cannot expect that something bad would happen to her. So from there you need to begin. You need to sit with the child and analyze the situation, how it happened, how the understanding of the child should be. You should give more importance how the child view that situation. So that is why I said that it is the adolescents, they view this situation in a compartmentalized way. Okay, they look into a small part of the situation. But you as a counselor should help them to see it in a larger picture, but their picture, what they were initially focusing should be part of that picture. You should be able to integrate that into it, so that means all the pain and the struggle and the hurts that they experience should be considered. Only then you will be able to reframe the situation, reframe the issue for the client. Have I
Yes,
answered
ma'am.
your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Right. Now we will move on to the next influencing skill, that is logical consequences. So that most of us know that this is logical consequences is actually we are helping the client to examine the possible consequences of their actions before they put it into action. Okay, their decisions. So how do we do that? Actually, when the client is confused, when the client comes up with certain plans, certain decisions, we need to help them. We need to help them to find the consequences of their decisions or their actions. By helping them to visualize the alternative actions and thus look at the possible possibilities by which they can resolve the situation. For example, a boy who was planning to discontinue his studies because of his repeated failing grade. So here, that is his decision. He has already decided that I better drop out from this course because I'm failing in most of the papers. So when he comes for the counseling, such a boy would profit much from you when you help him to list out the consequences of his decision, which can have an impact on the future. So if the boy realizes that the possible consequences that he would be facing in the future, definitely the boy would think about an alternative for that. Okay, an alternative action for that. So this is what I said. Logical consequence is actually we are trying to help the individual to examine their possible consequences of action before they implement it. And this is basically based on the consequences of this is something they learn through the consequences of their actions. Because we know that even as parents, you must have come across this kind of experiences. Because your child he must be wanting to join for a course because all his friends are there to do that, going to enroll for that particular course. And here I am, I too want to join them. But then later, he realizes that no, I'm getting failing grade, I better drop. Okay, so if you realize that the child has the capability to pursue that particular course, then you can always help the child to find the possibilities or find the consequences of his decision or his action, so that he can change these plans. And these consequences, logical consequences, can be done through warnings, through anticipation of punishment or anticipation of reward. And warnings, when you talk about warnings, you are actually helping the client to find the negative possibilities that are involved in the decision or action, and the consequences of it. Okay, so in this particular case about the boy's decision to quit the course or to drop the course, here you as a counselor or you as a parent helping him to examine the negative possibilities, find out the negative possibilities. If you are going to drop your course now, what do you think is going to happen in the future? Is it going to help you? How is it going to help you? How this decision is going to help you in the future? So these are certain warnings that you give. What you are giving to them. When you say warnings, you are actually putting across to them the negative possibilities that are involved in the decision or the action. And warnings tend to reduce the risk taking, and it gives more conformity to their decision. Okay, so when you know that, yeah, if you go for this, these are the consequences. So it is a kind of warning that you are giving. And most of the time, as parents, you give that to your children. If you start lingering with your friends in the night, this is what going to happen to you. Or if you are going to act every whims and fancies of your friends, this is what going to happen to you. So see here, you are actually giving them a warning. You are actually helping them to reflect on the negative possibilities involved in their action or their decision and the consequences of it. So once the children become aware of their negative consequences, there is a greater chance for them to look for another alternate action. May I move on to the next one? And as I said, logical consequences can be also done to anticipation of reward. See, for example, a client or a person an individual who finds very difficult to appear for an interview. And here you are helping her to visualize or to imagine what would be the outcome if you assert yourself, if you gain the confidence and appear for the session. So you just try to help them to visualize that. Visualize the positive consequences or the positive outcome of that action. So that's why we say it's an anticipation of the reward. Anticipation of the reward in the sense, what is the positive outcome of it? What is the positive consequence of this particular action? So if you really help the individual to visualize or to imagine that situation. Yeah, here you are going for an interview. You seem to be very confident. You put yourself as a person who is able to face the interview. You are going to answer the question. You are going to be very pleasant. So when you try to help the individual to visualize the entire situation, then he or she would feel that, yeah, I can make it. Okay, I can make it. So here you are bringing the person who initially thought that I would not go for an interview because I'm not confident enough to appear to attend that interview. But here you are bringing him or her from that stage to another stage where the person feels that I can do it. That is an anticipation of the reward. The reward is attending the interview in a positive way and get selected. So this is a logical. This is another way of you are helping the individual to examining the positive consequences, exploring the positive consequences of it. The other side, you are helping them to examine the negative consequences. That is what warning does. And here, in the anticipation of reward, you are actually helping the individual to visualize the positive consequences of it, so that the individual will be able to perform better. So can I move to the next slide? So now the next influencing skill is self-disclosure. Sometimes the counselor or the therapist has to reveal some of her some of her personal experiences to the client to help the client to come up with a good decision. And here, when you help the client, when you disclose yourself with your personal experience, when you disclose your personal experiences, make sure that you always emphasize the I statement. An I statement of feelings and experiences. It is not that something that you are, because it should, the client should feel that it is the personal experience of someone whom I am trusting, someone whom I trust. So your counselor, so that is why I said, when you begin the counseling by listening, but once the rapport is built, you would be using more of influencing skills to make a change, to bring about a change in the client's behavior. So here, self-disclosure is one way of using the influencing skill, one way of influencing the individual. That is, you are disclosing, you are revealing some of your personal experiences to the client, so that the client will be able to make a proper decision for his life. And also it enables the client to feel more comfortable to disclose. When it comes to adolescents, it is very difficult for them to disclose. Okay, it's very difficult for them to open up and to talk about their intimate and sensitive issues. But if the counselor is able to disclose her own personal experiences, the client would be able, that will help the client to disclose himself or herself. Furthermore, it also helps the client to relate with the counselor well, because he feels that, yeah, the counselor also has experienced similar feelings. He also has gone through similar experiences, has gone through similar feelings, has experienced similar feelings. So she would be able to understand me. She is understanding me. I can disclose my issues to her. So when you, as a counselor, reveal some of your personal experience, it will really help the client to disclose her issues or his issues, which he would never want, which he would otherwise never want to open up. Another benefit of this self-disclosure is the client gains confidence, a sense of confidence that will really help the client to gain confidence. Confidence for what? Confidence to work through his issues. Okay? Sometimes a client, the children may feel that they don't understand what I am going through. How much I am struggling to do a presentation. You don't understand how much I am struggling to do a presentation. Yes, it is true. But if as a counselor, if you reveal to him some of your personal experience, the way you struggle, so the client would think that, yeah, she has struggled and she was able to manage that situation, and she was able to do more presentation right now. So it is not something that I cannot work through. It's not something that is not possible to come in terms with. I can do it. So that kind of motivation. You're just motivating the client, motivating the person to work his own issues and achieve the success. Okay, so it's very important that when you disclose your personal experience, you see that you are disclosing something that is relevant for the client to make a proper decision. Something relevant, that is very important. You cannot just share anything. You make up your mind that what am I going to share? Is what I'm sharing is going to benefit the client, or it is just for the sake of sharing? So whatever you share, whatever you disclose to the client, Whatever you have decided to disclose the client, first you should analyze for yourself. You should decide for yourself. Is the sharing going to help my client or not? If not, please don't share. And if you don't have anything to disclose, any experience to disclose to the client, you need not have to. So it's very important. The disclosure should be relevant to the clients so that he would be able to make a decision for himself, a proper decision or appropriate or better decision for himself. And with regard to disclosure, I would like to bring to your notice a few things you should be very cautious about. You should be careful about. Okay. Sometimes by self-disclosure, through self-disclosure, we get to too much close. We get to the closeness between the client and the therapist becomes something that is not appropriate for the counseling. It is something that becomes very unethical, because that is what I said. At times, counselor's disclosure can lead to undesirable closeness with the client and over-involvement by the counselor. So you have to be very careful about it when you self-disclose. Your self-disclosure should not be something that is something that has got a different intention. Okay, that undesirable closeness, that is which is not going to help the client either at that present moment or in the long run. And then the second point is, when you disclose something, when the experience that you are planning, you are going to disclose, should not be something you have not resolved. It should be something that you have already resolved in your life. For example, I can give you an example. Suppose a young boy or a young girl who's coming to you, is approaching you and sharing with you her the recent separation of her parents and the pain involved in that experience of hers. And if you as a counselor has gone through a similar issue, and if you have not resolved that pain, then you cannot disclose that experience to the client, because it's not going to help the client. Because as I said earlier, when you disclose something, it should be something that would really help the client to feel confident that I too can work through this situation. That should be the feeling that you want to impart to the client, not that something that you have not resolved it. Because if you have not, you personally has had an experience of that, but you have, until now, you have not resolved that pain, then how can you help your client who has got similar issues through self-disclosure? You cannot. Okay, so you have to. The counselor should not talk about your past or present problems unless they are resolved. If it is something that is, the feelings are very raw, the emotions are very raw, and you are still struggling with that, and here you meet a client who has got similar experience, going through similar issue, and you are trying to disclose your pain, then if you have not resolved that pain, you will not be able to help the client. So this is something that you should keep in mind. It is dangerous. It is very harmful for you to make such disclosures. Now next comes the feedback. You sometimes, very often, when children are small, we praise them. We give them compliments, we praise them. But when they become adolescents, parents are a little bit hesitant to praise them or to give them compliments, thinking that they don't even bother. Of course, their attitude sometimes is like that. if mama says, yeah, well, son, you did it well, well done. Okay. That would be their reaction. Yeah, okay. Then they just move away from there. So it is hurting, for a parent, it is really, it really hurts. So when it is repeatedly done, we hesitate to give them any compliments. Adolescents often find themselves in situations where they are told that they have done things which they should not have done. Consequently, they feel adults are very critical of them. So this is what they have in their mind. So most of the time, instead of giving compliments or instead of giving praises, we tell them, why did you do that? Don't do this, don't do that. So they feel that they only find fault with me. They are very critical about me. Then here she comes with a compliment. Here she comes with a praise. No, I don't want it. I am not bothered to listen to that. So see, this is something that something that is there in their mind. So it's always, but even though they do it, they really value our appreciation, they really value compliments, they really value affirmations. So we should not stop just because they react to it that way. Because it all depends on their mood. Because their mood fluctuates every now and then. They have so many things which they are not very happy with in their life, and that is part of their development process. So we should not hesitate to give them compliments. Yesterday, Preetham ma'am was talking about it, the value of compliments and praise in the life of youngsters, in the life of adolescents. They really long for it. Even though they think that mama is critical or dad is critical or everybody is critical about them, but they value it. So we should not stop giving it, we should be giving it. And feedbacks can be used to give clients information about the performance which will be able to use as a reference for the improvement. So when you give them feedback, see, compliments, praises, yes, that's one side. And there are times we really need to give them feedback. So instead of just saying, don't do that, so they become, it just annoys them. No, they don't want to hear about all those things. But when you give a feedback, give the feedback in such a way that the child would be able to improve their performance or improve their behavior. Okay? It should be something that will focus for the improvement, not just saying no, don't do that, do it this way. So most of the time, we tend to tell them this way. Very in a demanding way, or just pointing out to their faults. So naturally they would feel that everyone is critical about it. So we need to think about, we need to reflect on how we give feedback to our children. And here are some guidelines in giving feedback. Always focus on the strength. Something that the client can do something about it. See, when you give a feedback, you frame it in such a way that the strength is being focused. For example, a client who is coming for counseling session saying that last time maybe he must be having his anger issue, must be dealing with the anger issues, and after 1 or 2 sessions, once the client, when he comes for another session, he says that, see, I feel that I am improving in this area, because last time something like this happened when my friend, I felt that my friends were teasing me while I was doing my presentation. But then I noticed it and I felt it. But then I could have reacted as I used to react before. But I just left from the scene. See, here the client is now telling you this. So sometimes we just, as counselors, we just say, yeah, that's good. Okay. So you believe that you are learning to cope with the situation. See now, this is how you sometimes we reflect it in this way. So you believe that you are beginning to cope, you are learning to cope with the situation. Instead of saying this, you can say that, yeah, you are coping very well. Now you are coping very well. You are dealing with the situation very well. So here, there's a difference in saying that. The other one, you said that so you believe that you are coping. It's not pointing on it's not going to give any, it's not actually directing the change or the improvement that the client made in his behavior. Because when you say that you believe, so it's not something that you believe, it is something that he did. He performed already. So you need to compliment on that particular thing that really happened. That is a strength that he has. He's talking about. It's something that he really acquired. So you need to compliment on that. You need to praise on that. Then feedback should be about the behavior, not about aspects of personality, intelligence, etc. Yeah. Because personality is not something that you need to compliment. You need to give a feedback. Okay. Intelligence. So these are certain things that the client cannot. That's why I said when you give feedback, it should be something that the client can use as a reference for improvement. Okay. Not on this personality or the intelligence. Then feedback should describe the effect of the person's behavior on you. This is very important, especially when we deal with adolescents. Because most of the time, we don't have the patience to tell them that, what is it that made me upset? Okay? You shouted at me, so that's it. I reacted this way. But always it is good to tell them that when you shouted at me, what I felt. I remember once when while I was an adolescent, I used to get, for every little thing I used to shout at my mother. Then one day my mama called me we were about to go to sleep. So she came to my bedside and she said, this morning when I asked you about your studies, you just shouted at me. It really pained me. It's not that I want to compare you with your other siblings, but actually my intention was to help you out. I'm really interested how you are doing it, because I find you most of the time very low. When you sit for studies, I've noticed that you often look very sad, depressed. That means there is something that is happening in you. But I never dared to ask you how you are faring in that subject, because you were showing a different face. You are in a different mood. So this morning when you shouted at me, it really pained me. And that was the last time that I shouted at my mother. Never again, never after that I did shout to my mother, because she expressed her feelings. Okay, so likewise to the adolescents, when we know that it is difficult to deal with them at times because of their fluctuating moods and the temperaments, but it's always good to express to them your feelings. Okay? And what particular behavior that hurt you, so that they would not repeat it again. So it is very important we focus on that. And feedback should be concrete and specific. Feedback should be timely. If it is to be given now, give it right now. Not after 1 week or not after 1 month. Telling them, that day when we went for a party, you behaved this way. So the child may not recall what is it that mama is talking about, or what is it this teacher is talking about. Okay, so it has to be timely and it should be non-judgment. It should not be given to them in a way that is judgment. You are talking about the behavior, not the person. Okay, the person, that's your son, your daughter, or to us, it's our client. So when you give feedback, respect the individual and give feedback to the behavior that is to be changed, and it should be specific, concrete, and timely. That is very important. Now comes the next influencing skill, that is information giving. So we need to give sometimes information to the client. Information giving is very much different from giving advices. Okay, informations are given to the client to explore, to find out, to work out something in their, which would really help them to come up with proper decisions, or which could help them to improve themselves. Okay, providing information can be to introduce clients new possibilities, highlight alternatives, and inspire new ways of approaching old problems. Okay, so it's very important that when you give information, for example, students come to us for information regarding the courses that which they have to choose. Okay, so you are giving them their information. So information should be based on data, opinions, facts, and resources. So it should be relevant to whatever you give, whatever information you give, it should be relevant to the person. It's not that you're loading the person with too much of information. It's not going to help. And once the information is given to the client, you find out from the client whether he or she finds it relevant. Are the facts provided is helping you? It's not that just giving any information. It's not going to help the individual. Then the next one is directives. Directives is something that we give to persons or the clients about, like, for an action plan. Here are simple suggestions. It is not actually an advice that you are giving. For example, a client has come up, or your children, a child has come up with certain plans, okay, certain action plans, and he's showing you and just discuss with you. So when it happens, it should not be in the form of advice. It should be in the form of suggestions based on evidences. You analyze the problem, and you should help the individual, help the child, or help the client to identify the exact nature of the problem and provide options for it. For example, even in case of taking any courses for your studies, okay, you can give them information. Okay, you can provide information in such a way that the child would be able to use it or reflect on it and think about, is this giving me proper direction? Is this information providing me something that I can do, or something that I can use for my decision making? So that is very important. The counselors play a prominent role to direct counselors to think by informing, explaining, interpreting, and advising. So advising, when I talk about advising, it is not that we as counselors are not supposed to advise. It is not that sense. It is like giving information, giving simple suggestions based on the facts. After listening to their issues or listening to their problem, analyze that problem, and then give the exact nature of the problem, and then give the suggestions, then give your opinions. That is what is directives. Such directives would be always helpful for the client or the individuals to make proper decisions in their life. Sometimes we can for individuals who are depressed, individuals who are depressed, we need to motivate them, right? So this can be, when you listen to their problems, you can just give some directives, some suggestions which can motivate them and move on with their life. Okay, so this is what the directives is. So here, before I wrap up, I will just recall which are the. Can you just recall the influencing skills that we learned today? First one is interpretation and reframe. Interpretation and reframe. The second one, we dealt with logical consequences, where we are helping the individual to examine the consequences of his actions or decisions. The third one, it was just the third one that we looked into. Can anyone unmute and tell me which is the third one? First one, self-disclosure. Yes. Sometimes the counselor has to reveal some of her personal experience or his personal experience to help the client to make proper decisions in his life. Then the fourth one, feedback.
Feedback.
Okay, they all told.
Yeah, feedback also I already mentioned. Adolescents, even though they seem to be not appreciative of compliments and praises, but actually they really need it. Okay, they really need it. And feedbacks, and I've also given some guidelines for giving the feedbacks and giving the feedbacks. So you need to remember those feedback, those things, those points. Even for parents also, when you deal with your children. And the fourth one, the fifth one was information and suggestions, and the last one, directives. So these are the 6 influencing skills, 6 skills that we can use in our counseling session in order to make an impact on our clients. So we have. I'm stopping here. Maybe if any of you have got any doubts or clarification, you may ask.
Ma'am, I'm just clarifying something which is in my mind. We have the second influencing skill, logical consequences.
Yes, Lavina.
We have different alternatives. We visualize, we help them in the form of warnings and anticipation of reward.
For rewards, yes.
But the directives come towards the end, ma'am. Like when they are ready with their plan or they come up with a plan. Is it,
Yeah, you're talking about the directives.
Yeah, because here also we are analyzing the problem.
Yes.
Should this come at the beginning or towards the end?
Yes, Lavina. It can. You see, this is now. I just put different skills together. Okay? So it is not necessary that directives should be always last. No. When you are in the counseling session, when you are dealing with a young person, you can use any of these skills as the now sometimes just casually when some young person coming and talking to you about something, his or her action plans, you are just discussing with him, just sit with him, discuss with him and analyze. Your plans, it looks good, but I have a few suggestions to give. Okay, so when you give suggestions, you are not going to give the suggestion just as a suggestions, but you have to, when you give suggestions, you see that you provide the supporting facts also. Okay, that way you will be able to convince the person, convince the individual. Otherwise, it would be just like anybody giving them any suggestions, especially to adolescents. They are very particular. They really do not want to take suggestions because they always feel that they are independent. They want to be very autonomous.
So, ma'am, we can use any of the skills depending on the situation.
Yes, depending on the situation and depending on the needs of the individual.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Anything, anyone else? Okay, if you,
Doctor, I have a question.
yeah.
Initially, as a counselor, if we are supposed to tell them about the consequences and give them warning about what things that the negative aspects of the decisions or their actions, isn't it something that is already done at home by parents or the elders in the family, and finally they are brought to the counselors? So how is as a counselor we are the same thing is should be done differently? I can understand non-judgmental. Is that the only thing, or there is something
No,
else?
yeah, yes, I will. I just, it's a very good question, Radhika. See here, uh, I initially said that influencing skills we use once the rapport is built. Okay,
Yes.
we are not using the influencing. See, when you bring the child, for example, as you said, already the warning is being already you have spoken enough at home, and now you are bringing them to the counseling. Okay, so when in the counseling session, if the counselor also is going to use the influencing skills right way, right at that particular moment, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to make any difference to the client. Okay? The client will definitely resist to that. What you need to do is, you need to first develop a rapport with the client. And maybe it cannot be possible within 1 or 2 sessions. Maybe after 3 or 4 sessions, maybe gradually, when you realize that the client has developed the trust in me, then at that point of time you can use the influencing skills. You will be able to help the client to examine the consequences of his action or behavior, not just right away when he comes for counseling, because it's already in his mind that my mom or my father has already spoken to the client, already the informations are given, and the counselor is going to deal with me in a very unfavorable manner. No, that impression should not, that impression, it would be there. So therefore, you should use the influencing skill only after the rapport is built, not in the beginning stage. Have I answered, Radhika?
Yes, sister. One more question. In my experience, I'm able to get good results with the 18-year-olds and above, young adults, I would say.
Yeah, yes.
But when it comes to, say, students who are in 9th, 10th, or younger, the
Yeah,
younger
I
they are,
understand.
it is more difficult. It is
Yeah,
because
I
they
know.
don't express at all. They don't open up. Some
Yeah,
do, most don't.
yeah.
So
Majority,
how do
it's
you
very
go about
unfortunate.
rapport building? Yeah, and all that.
Are you a school counselor or college counselor?
I did do my internship, but I'm not very comfortable in that area, because I feel that most of the time counselors who do counsel these kids get involved in a totally different way. They are either go as volunteers and give them tuitions and things like that, and I think it's a longer process. So I'm more comfortable with 18-year and above.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to know what is that I would need to do if I were to counsel younger kids.
yeah. It's all matter of trust, Radhika. It's actually a long process. Then you cannot just simply um, develop a relationship, one-to-one relationship with adolescents. You need to listen to them. They should feel that you are a person who can uh, really engage them in uh, help. You can really help them to talk. Okay, because the trust issue is very important. The way you express it, the way you communicate. That's why it's very important that when an adolescent come to us for counseling, they always, more than we observing them, they would be observing us. Okay, how this person is. They will evaluate us then and there. Okay, so it is very important how we welcome them, how we talk to them, how we listen to them. Okay, all these are very important. The warmth, okay, the empathy, warmth, the unconditional positive, all those things are very essential for us to practice with, to deal with the adolescent. So that is why most of the counselors, they do not want to deal with adolescent issues, because they know that it's hard to get them open up or to get them talk freely. It would take some time, because they always look at us with a very suspicious eye. Yeah, these counselors, we cannot trust them. They are very critical, especially when it comes to school. If you are going going for internship in your school, definitely, because they would think that whatever I say, this counselor may go and reveal it to a principal or the teachers.
Yeah.
Okay? So that fear is always there. So you need to talk to them about this kind of about confidentiality and things like that. So only then it will take some time to.
No, I do that, but some I get good response and it helps them. But once since we are not supposed to be judgmental and take them at face value, some children do talk, but later the principal or somebody gives a totally different story and says that they lie a lot and things like that. So it is a little
Exactly.
confusing.
So you see, that is why I said the elders, the adults, they say, the youngsters, the adolescents always say that the adults are, or the counselors are critical just because of this. Because when in those schools, they see, for example, maybe as you are coming out of the office, you may be meeting the principal and you may be just talking to, or meeting one of the teachers, and this boy or this child must be watching this from far. So then they must be seen. I was sent to her. Now she must be asking about me. Now they must be talking about me. See, now the confidence, the trust is broken already there. So it's very difficult when you, especially when you are there when you go up there as for your internship, or you are a school counselor counseling the students of the particular school. But if an outside counselor comes in, maybe to some extent they would be able to build a rapport with them.
Probably, yes, sister. Thank you.
Ma'am, I had a question.
Yes,
We, long ago, tried to help one of our relatives. He didn't want to study, and with great amount of persuasion, he completed his 12th. 10th and 12th, but after that again he got distracted. He was in a great hurry to get a job and get married. So wondering, how do you go about in a situation like this when they always are so short-sighted, and they're not willing to, in spite of you giving them the big picture, they are still quite, some people are very strong-willed. And how do you deal with such situation?
You mean that some children are very adamant about that what they want they have to do, right? But see, even for such children also,
very adamant.
Even for such children also, you can you can speak to them about the consequences of their decision or their action. So if in spite of that, if they feel that they should be doing what they want to do, then to some extent we are helpless. Okay, we are helpless to do that, because that we should keep in mind. See, we cannot bring about a positive change in every client that comes to us. We would do our best, but in certain cases, the person will not listen to anything. It is impossible to have a break. So in such cases, we are helpless actually. We cannot do anything. But it doesn't mean that we are incompetent to deal with a situation like that.
Yeah,
Most
because
of the, but now he is married and gone.
yes, he took up a job, got married. Now again he wants to quit his job, and we suggested that he continues. He is abroad, so he wanted to come back. So we said no, because it will be very difficult for him to get a job back here. So he's not too happy about it, but he's continuing. So we hope that he continues.
Yeah. So maybe you may have to. He must be having some difficulties with to be stay on with certain.
Right now, his
Discipline.
wife and kid have come back, so he finds it difficult to stay alone.
Yeah.
But
You need to explore more on his issues, Akila, because right from his that as a teenager he had this kind of difficulties, because he was quite determined about what he wants to do, but in spite of others. In spite of making him know about the consequences of his actions and decisions, but even now also. So it may be something that is something to do with his personality or something like that.
yes,
We need to
I
explore
think
more.
it's impulsive, that wants to do things.
Yeah, so that we need to explore more on him. What is it that is making him to do that? Okay, because now he must be in his 30 or 28, 30 years old, right? Maybe
Yes, he
not
in his
very
early 30s, but still
early 30s. Yeah.
very quick. He
So
wants
now
quick
it's,
results, doesn't want to work hard for it.
yeah. So you see, he has now that adolescent age is over. No? He is now
Yes,
a full adult. So
yes.
even being an adult, his decisions are like that. That means we need to look into this situation, look into his issues in detail. We need to do more exploration on that.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, then we will end up this session. Thank you everyone for patiently listening to me and for
Wilsey ma'am,
the right sessions. Okay, yes,
Wilsey ma'am,
Rosa ma'am. Yes, Rosa ma'am.
there is one question in the chat box, ma'am.
Uh,
Suppose the counselor has an unresolved issue and
uh.
similar case comes to you. Do you pass on the case to someone else or is there an alternative? How do you help the client?
Ma'am, can you just repeat that question?
Suppose the counselor has an unresolved issue and a similar case comes to you. Do you pass on the case to someone else or is there an alternative? How do you help the client?
See, we were talking about the. I presume that this question has come based on the self-disclosure which I mentioned. So there, yes, I said if the issue is not resolved, then you should not be disclosing anything. But here, this question is. If the counselor has a similar issue of that of the client, and if the counselor feels that she is not able to deal with the issue since her um, emotions are still raw with related to this particular problem, then in that case it would be wise if we could refer that client to another person. I would say that, because if the issue is similar to what the counselor is struggling with, then how can as a counselor help another individual going through the same issue? It may not be possible. So it would be wise if you refer that to another person. Have I answered your question?
Yes, ma'am. The response is yes. Yes.
Is there
Uh,
anyone else?
yes. Shall we wind up for today, ma'am? And we
Yes.
continue tomorrow with the strategies
Yeah.
managing adolescent issues.
Thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
participants.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sister. Thank you.